Putin's apocalyptic endgame in Ukraine. Annexation and mobilization make nuclear war more likely. The end is near, my friends, and we will all go down in a blaze of nuclear hellfire when Vladimir Putin smashes the button. Maybe that's your fear. Maybe it's not. Maybe you are very concerned about this, or maybe you're only somewhat concerned because you don't really think that's what's going to happen, but it could be. And maybe you've tried talking to your friends and your family and saying, guys, please listen to me. What's happening in Ukraine is bad. We all agree. But the escalation on NATO's part will potentially lead to a nuclear annihilation. And maybe your friends and family have responded with, oh, no, it won't. Who cares? I'm not interested. And they fan you off. Well, my friends, you're in luck. I have for you a rhetorical device. It is switching the theme of the crisis from nuclear annihilation to your gas prices are gonna go up. It's happening now. The Saudis, OPEC Plus, are backing Russia, and that means it is going to be worse for you here in the United States. So now, to all of your friends and family, when they say, don't know, don't care, and don't think nuclear war is going to happen, you can say, have you noticed gas prices going up? And they'll go, well, yeah, that I've noticed. And have you ever wondered why that is? Well, I assume it's because of Russia's war. You're technically correct. And it's also because OPEC has sided with Russia. We lost that one. Now, of course, the U.S. is responding. They're saying if you don't ramp up production, we are going to pull the security forces for your oil network and pumping and all of that stuff, your infrastructure. And that means bad news for you. The U.S. has been supplying Saudis with weapons and helping them in a lot of international conflicts, some really disgusting ones, because the Saudis then pump out massive amounts of oil, which lowers the cost for everybody. But now, OPEC, siding with Russia, says they're going to cut supply, allowing Russia to keep selling at a premium rate to India and China and then reselling it back to us and to Europe so they can finance their war. That's the reality of war. And you know what? Maybe then they still might say, yeah, okay, that's bad. It affects me. Okay, now I'm concerned. But you know what? It's for Ukraine. Okay, well, then I'll tell you this. There's only one way out. If gas prices go up, everything else is going to become more expensive, and then Democrats lose. This is the reporting we're getting now from a bunch of different analysts and outlets saying that because of the rising gas prices, Democrats are starting to freak out, and this is going to seriously harm their chances. Have you noticed that the escalation of oil prices somewhat coincided, perhaps maybe spuriously, but it did coincide with Republicans gaining in the polls? Then when gas prices started to go down, Democrats started to return in the polls. It's the economy, stupid. When gas prices go up, Democrats lose. Why? Well, they're in charge right now. Joe Biden is the leader of the United States. So they say. I think, you know, what I mean by that is the dude's clearly not all with it, but at least he's in that position. Democrats are in Congress and the Senate. Anything bad that happens is going to be under their watch. And especially with this Ukraine war stuff, Biden's signing off on all this funding. How about you provide funding to, I don't know, like Flint's water pipes or Florida hurricane relief? How about you stop draining the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? This is the warning sign, my friends. Joe Biden is depleting the Strategic Petroleum Reserve right now, desperately trying to keep prices down. He's being mocked by oil industry executives and senior individuals, because now he's got to come crawling back. But Joe Biden is using our SPR, Strategic Petroleum Reserve, I got it, in an effort to save himself politically because of his deplorable and failing ideas. So if nuclear war doesn't move the needle for people, you can always go back with, yeah, but you're paying more in gas. And if that doesn't move the needle, you can say, well, fine. The war is the reason Democrats will lose. Maybe then they'll be like, no, we don't want to lose. Donald Trump. The Republicans, MAGA, they're going to win. But let's take a look at this story. The New York Times, in rebuke to the West, OPEC and Russia aim to raise oil prices with a big supply cut. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com, become a member in order to support our work. As a member, you'll get access to exclusive, uncensored shows from Timcast IRL Monday through Thursday at 11 p.m. Typically spicy, last night's was wild with Jason Burmis. You may remember him from Loose Change notoriety. And we talked about a whole lot of crazy things. It was really, really fun. And you'll also get access to the Cast Castle vlog, comedic entertainment, as well as Tales from the Inverted World, true crime, horror, mysteries, the paranormal. And you'll be supporting our journalists. But also don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel right now, and be the notification. Many people have been saying, Tim, YouTube's not notifying me anymore when your videos go live. Right before a midterm election, when I'm pointing out that failed Democrat policies are resulting in rising gas prices. Who does that benefit? Certainly not Republicans. Now, I'm not a big fan of the Republican Party as a whole, but I am a big fan of pointing out the Democrats are doing a bad job, and that will have an impact on the midterms. So when we hear over and over again that people have been unsubbed from the channel or that YouTube's not notifying them anymore, sounds fishy, doesn't it? There's a way around this. If you, as a viewer, take the URL to this video and post it anywhere you can, then you become the notification. No amount of censorship can stop a grassroots effort. They can try, but the ideas will persist. Here's the story from the New York Times. They report Saudi Arabia and Russia, acting as leaders of the OPEC Plus energy cartel, agreed on Wednesday to their first large production cut in more than 2 years in a bid to raise prices, countering efforts by the U.S. and Europe to choke off the enormous revenue that Moscow reaps from the sale of crude. President Biden and European leaders have urged more oil production to ease gasoline prices and punish Moscow for its aggression in Ukraine. Vladimir, they say V. Putin, they've given his middle initial. Vladimir V. Putin, the Russian president, has been accused, isn't his name like Vladimir Volodymyr or something? Has been accused of using energy as a weapon against countries opposing its invasion of Ukraine. And the optics of the decision could not be missed. The White House was not happy. Quote, the president is disappointed by the short-sighted decision by OPEC Plus to cut production quotas while the global economy is dealing with the continued negative impact of Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Brian Deese, the director of the National Economic Council, and Jake Sullivan, the national security advisor, said in a statement. The cut of 2 million barrels a day represents about 2% of global oil production. Reducing output, OPEC Plus was also seeking to make a statement to energy markets about the group's cohesion during the Ukraine war and its willingness to act quickly to defend prices, analysts say. There's an old saying, my friends, money talks and bullish walks. And OPEC looked right into the eyes of Joe Biden, shook his hand and said, F you. You don't have it. Remember when Antony Blinken was sitting down with the Chinese government official, and he said, the United States is not negotiating from a position of power. This is what it's like to have no leverage. Joe Biden can go to OPEC and be like, side with us, and they can say, why? You don't got the bills. You don't got the skills to pay the bills. There you go. But actually, you don't got the bills either. The hundos, you don't got the money. You can't do it. OPEC looks at Russia and says, we'd rather keep selling because we just want the money. Your stupid ideological war, whatever garbage game you're playing, doesn't interest us. And now we get to suffer because Biden is a moron. Because the Democrats failed leadership. At a news conference after the meeting, the Saudi energy minister, Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, said OPEC Plus was acting amid signs of a downturn in the world economy that might cause demand for oil to weaken and prices to fall. We would rather be preemptive than be sorry. The move appeared to have the desired result. The price of Brent crude, the international benchmark, which had slumped during the summer, rose more than 1.5% after the meeting, extending the gains recorded in recent days and bringing prices back to levels last seen in mid-September. The average price of gasoline in the U.S. recently began to rise again, tracking the price of oil. In response to the OPEC Plus announcement, Biden administration officials said the president would order the Energy Department to release 10 million additional barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in November. Earlier this week, the administration said it has no plans to extend a 6-month effort to release 1 million barrels a day, which was scheduled to finish at the end of this month. Hours before the OPEC Plus meeting, the European Union pushed ahead with an ambitious plan promoted by the Biden administration to cap the price of Russian oil in coordination with Group of 7 nations and others. It's pointless, if you ask me, because India and China don't care. They don't care. They're going to work backroom deals with Russia. Russia's going to sell to them at a discount rate, but then they're going to sell to Europe at a premium. And that will provide funding to Russia to carry on their war. And Europe will be strained further, where inflation will skyrocket, and they are losing this one. Now, I don't mean the war in Ukraine, By all measures of Western media, Ukraine is winning. But I think Putin's going to unleash nuclear hellfire if it comes down to him potentially losing. In the end, Europe is being battered, their economy being ripped apart because of this. They say the European Union cap is intended to set the price of Russian oil lower than where it is today, but still above the cost of producing it. The U.S. Treasury Department estimates that the program could deprive the Kremlin of tens of billions of dollars annually. But some analysts say the cap would make the logistics of the oil trade more difficult, driving prices higher. And it relies on the participation of non-EU nations that are still buying Russian oil. Imagine this. Imagine Russia just says, okay, I'll tell you what. No oil for you. None. We'll cut you off completely. Then what? I do think it's funny that European nations are like, we're at war with Russia, but we'll keep buying oil from them they're going to use. Like, Russia is giving oil to NATO that NATO is using to fight them. At a certain point, they're going to be like, nah, not worth it. Keep it for ourselves. In China, one of the biggest consumers of Russian oil this year, the foreign ministry has criticized the concept, warning last month that oil is too important to the global economy to be subject to the planned price controls. Oil is a global commodity. Ensuring global energy supply security is vitally important. Mao Ning, a foreign ministry spokeswoman, said on September 5th. And the European Union proposal aimed at pushing down prices would seem to compete against OPEC Plus's action to seek to raise prices. But there is uncertainty about how deep the cut in oil production will go. Because of a lack of investment, most members of the OPEC Plus regularly fall short of their production quotas and will not need to trim the production much, if at all. Richard Bronze, the head of the Geopolitics at Energy Aspects, a research firm, estimates that the actual cut will be about 1 million barrels today. Here's the ramifications. From USA Today, why are gas prices going up? More pain at the pump as OPEC cuts oil production by 2 million barrels. Uh-oh. Why are gas prices going up? It's because of Biden's war. Biden's war. Now, they want to blame Vladimir Putin for this, but let me make one thing clear. We do not need to be involved. You want to call it Putin's war? Fine. Call it Putin's war. But if NATO, if Biden, if these European leaders stayed out of it, there'd be no issue for us. So tell me, please, why are we engaged in a war in Ukraine with Russia? Okay, fine. Give me all the ideological reasons you want. Fine. As long as you acknowledge that is why gas prices are going up. If we did not get involved, Russia would keep selling oil. The U.S. would keep getting their oil. Saudi Arabia would be working with us. We wouldn't be worried about this. Instead, Russia moves on Ukraine for a variety of reasons, and NATO gets involved. Again, we the United States, we're not on the border of Ukraine. So for what reason are we involved? Talk to Joe Biden. Here we go. U.S. delivers angry rebuke of massive OPEC Plus production cut, and it could backfire for Saudi Arabia. Oh, could it backfire for Saudi Arabia? It's possible. What they're now saying is that let's walk there. Let's walk there. Biden's searching for alternatives to help lower gas prices after OPEC cuts oil production. USA Today reports, quote, "We are looking at alternatives. We haven't made up our minds yet." Well, they are dumping strategic petroleum reserves. Biden to deplete oil reserves in wake of OPEC production cut. This is unprecedented. The purpose of the strategic petroleum reserve is not to save the presidency of a failed, impaired president. But that's what he's doing. That's what he's doing. And here's the real potential, the negative for Saudi Arabia. The Hill reports, House Democrats propose end to U.S. troop protection in Gulf after OPEC cut. Well, okay. War. That's the reality. All of these are breaking ties. All of these actions. I'll explain this one. OPEC Plus siding with Russia leaves the U.S., at least several legislators, saying we're going to end troop protection in there. Saudi Arabia will then go to Russia or China and say, you want to fill the gap? It's that simple. They'll say, we're going to keep doing what we got to do to sell and make money. We don't care about your country. They'll say, you don't want to protect us? Russia will you. Russia's going to say, oh, you bet. And that's going to further divide this country. And it's going to be a heck of a World War III when the U.S. is severed from OPEC. When OPEC starts saying, we ain't giving you any oil, and Joe Biden cut our capability of producing energy at home. It almost feels like it's all intentional, doesn't it? 3 House Democrats have introduced legislation to end U.S. troop protection in Saudi Arabia and the U.S. Arab Emirates in response to this week to news that OPEC and its allies will slash oil production. Saudi Arabia and the UAE, which together comprise about 30% of global crude oil reserves, have some 5,000 U.S. troops stationed there. In addition to removing those troops, the American missile defense systems from 2 countries, the legislation introduced by Reps Sean Cassen, Tom Malinowski, and Susan Wild would move all U.S. technology and defense systems elsewhere in the region. And then Vladimir Putin walks on in with a smile on his face, puts his military defense there, and the Saudis say, thank you kindly. Quote, this decision is a turning point in our relationship with our Gulf partners. If Saudi Arabia and the UAE hope to maintain a relationship with the United States that has been overwhelmingly beneficial to them, they must show a greater willingness to work with us, not against us, in advancing what is now our most urgent national security objective, the defeat of Russia's aggression in Ukraine. Whoa! And there it is, the admission, my friends. I want you all to hear that one more time. United States representatives said they must work with us in advancing our national security objective of defeating Russia in Ukraine. Is that enough for you? Amazing. Instead, by significantly boosting global oil prices, OPEC's decision appears designed to increase Russia's oil export revenues, enabling Putin to continue his war crimes in Ukraine and undercutting Western sanctions. That's right. We're involved. They know we're involved, and they're lying to you about it. I don't think Vladimir Putin sees it any other way. He's not being duped by these lies. NBC News reports OPEC decision could raise gas prices at home as midterm election approaches. Cue the Jaws swimming theme. First read is your briefing from Meet the Press. Oh, we love Meet the Press. By Chuck Todd. So much for President Joe Biden's earlier visit to Saudi Arabia and even that fist bump with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. On Wednesday, OPEC announced it was cutting back production. This we get. They issue some quotes. We get it. It's important to take stock of that context. Recession fears are sweeping the West, and Democrats here at home fear that any last-minute rise in prices before the midterms could spell trouble. And against that backdrop, Russia, which is part of OPEC, continues to stumble in its war with Ukraine both militarily and diplomatically. So while the West blasts this new price hike, it's going to be received warmly in Moscow. It also benefits Republicans, especially since Dems' stronger midterm fortunes have coincided with gas prices going down, as I stated early on. Here we go, baby. U.S. oil industry mocks Biden after OPEC announced production cuts. Energy groups say administration now has no choice but to come crawling back to domestic producers. Please, Joe Biden, come crawling back. Gas prices should go down. Inflation is already very high. Stop hiding behind this. Everyone can see things are getting bad. You need to own it, and you need to do something about it. U.S. Oil and Gas Association says, OPEC says no. SPR options are all but gone. The White House has one option left, and it is the one option they should have never turned away from in the first place. The U.S.-based oil and gas industry. I got an idea. Why don't we invade Alaska? Oh, it's not an invasion because it's U.S. territory? Okay, why don't we deploy U.S. resources into Alaska because there's oil there and lots of it and other energy. Why not? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they'll have to. You guys ever play Fallout? I believe the story of Fallout 3, or I think Fallout, the entire series. It's a video game, for those that aren't familiar, I assume you are, about post-nuclear apocalypse. And the story is that in 2077, there's a shortage of fuel, and China invades Alaska in desperation to get whatever they can. And I think it was something to do with I don't remember the whole story. But my point is, there is an element. The culture, this country understands that Alaska is a vast, untapped resource. We don't need to be involved with the Saudis. We don't need war in the Middle East. We need to utilize what we already have. Alaska is massive, and we can get energy from there. Here we go from the American Petroleum Institute. Just a reminder, amid calls to increase domestic production, the Biden administration has leased fewer acres for oil and gas production on federal lands and waters than any other administration dating back to the end of World War II. Well, that's doing us, that's good. That's fantastic. It's doing us so well. CNBC. Economy, inflation, top of mind for midterm voters, giving GOP slight edge in new Monmouth poll. That's right, my friends. CNN's got it. Likely gas price hikes could hurt voters and Democrats' chances in November. You heard it. A planned cut by production in the Middle East, in defiance of the White House, is likely to further spike gas prices. Ministers of OPEC said blah, blah, blah. The reaction in blah, blah, blah. They say high gas prices pummeled Americans in the early summer, culminating in a record average price of $1.06 in mid-June. But prices have been falling for nearly 98 days in a row. However, it's going to change the game. They say a fall gas price crisis could reshape the environment of midterm elections that historically are punishing for first-term presidents. Democrats had dared to hope in recent weeks that a combination of anger over the Supreme Court overturning of Roe v. Wade and erratic GOP candidates elevated by President Trump, blah, 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 would help them win. But a renewed focus on inflation and gas prices, combined with a tax on immigration and violent crime, could erase some of that Democratic optimism. Could? It is. No question. Here's what we have right now. This is absolutely fascinating. Over the summer, gas prices were very high and Republicans had an edge. And then gas prices started coming down. Republicans lost their edge. Democrats, according to 538, now have a 1-point generic ballot lead. I'll tell you, it's still apocalyptic for Democrats. Although the Democratic polling has shifted, it now favors them. We know the polling tends to favor Democrats. Historically, when Democrats have a 5-point lead, they lose substantially. Which means if they're below 5, it's gonna be apocalyptic. But hey, over at Real Clear Politics, it's worse than that. RCP average. This is not a single poll. This is a dozen plus polls. Show Republicans with a 0.4% edge. That spells apocalypse. But we'll see. I cannot see the future, my friends. Democrats may very well pull this one out, and we might actually see Democrats win. My friends, we could be looking at Democrats could win in November substantially. I'm going to say that for you one more time. Despite all the polling and everything you've seen, we could be looking at a major victory for Democrats. Why, you say? Is the parties have changed. The Democrats are the party of the elite, and they're highly motivated by the insanity of Donald Trump. And I don't mean him personally. I mean the ideas around him and MAGA Republicans. That's what they've been pushing for. Hey, look, I think it's the economy, stupid. I think the economy plays a role. But if you are sitting back thinking that Republicans got this in the bag, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. I wouldn't be surprised if come November, we do see surprising Democrat victories. Considering what we saw in 2020, it's looking like Republicans will win, but we really don't know. The data suggests a Republican victory. The historical trends suggest a Republican victory, but you do not know how politics are playing out right now. Now, as much as gas prices are really, really bad for Democrats, let me give you the worst news. And here it is. Yahoo Finance says your utility bill could be the next $5 gas. Listen up, Democrats. This one's coming for you. Yahoo writes, drivers have stopped panicking now that gasoline prices have dropped from $5 per gallon in June to less than $4. But global energy markets are still turbulent, and the next pinch might come from winter gas prices for heat and electricity. Tight energy markets began pushing up the price of natural gas, America's largest source of electricity, in 2021. Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the corresponding energy war in Europe have further boosted global gas prices, with Europe facing soaring costs and possible blackouts this winter. Price hikes in the U.S. aren't as severe, but U.S. natural gas is still trading about 65% higher than a year ago and 170% higher than 2 years ago. That means Winter power and heating costs are likely to be considerably higher than last year, which itself was a budget breaker. You know, the other day I woke up and it was cold outside. Leaving the studio late at night, getting on my little electric motorcycle, and I was like, man, I need to bring a coat next time. It's cold outside. I turned the heat on because it dropped to the low 40s. Yeah, we're going to see those costs. Those bills are going to start coming in. And I mean, AC costs are probably high as it was with electricity. I was reading a news story about an aluminum plant that was shutting down because the cost of electricity was too high. It couldn't work anymore. Do you think regular people aren't seeing this? Regular people right now are watching She-Hulk or something. They don't know about what you're talking about and they don't care. What they do know is they got their energy bill and went, what? What's going on? You can only go so far with your psychotic, I blame the religious right for the cost of my energy going up. They're not in power. They're not passing these bills, and they're certainly not the ones declaring the wars. Yeah, that's the Democrats. And y'all voted for them, but y'all are too insane. You're too broken, you cultists. So realize you're doing this. Whatever, man. Maybe enough regular people did, however, realize this. And I'm not talking to you if you did. Many independent voters are realizing, you know what? I made a big mistake voting Democrat because look how bad it's gotten. Maybe it's time they wake up and say, we need something else. I don't like the Republican Party, man. I think they're just so awful. But there are some good Republicans. And at the very least, we need change. They want to demonize the MAGA Republicans because they're populists. That's it. What does that mean? It means they want the will of the people, not the will of the elites. The elitists. No. The will of the elitists is to keep you blind, deaf, and dumb, confused about what's going on and unable to explain, to understand, to speak it out. They want you blind, not seeing exactly what's happening. They want you deaf, not listening to the arguments people make, saying why they're bad, and they want you dumb. They don't want you on social media speaking your mind because they will lose power. I mean, dumb, quite literally, not speaking. So they take away your voice. And they'll get their way, but so long as we keep speaking out, sharing information, and calling out their failures, so long as we do that, they will not succeed in their authoritarianism. Everything that they do, they try to project onto everyone else. And while there are people that I don't think do a good job, like Lindsey Graham, he's the worst. Kevin McCarthy, and you've got Mitch McConnell, of course, widely despised in polls by even Republicans to a great degree. There are still many good Republicans who are trying to bring down energy costs for you. They're trying to remove harsh regulations on your business. They're trying to lower the costs. There are certainly some Democrats that do that. The problem is Democrats tend not to follow the news. That's just reality. Polls. In a poll that I've talked about quite a bit over the past several years, Democrats just march in lockstep with corporate press. Republicans tend to get their media diet is actually from the left and the right. Moderates are the same way. I think most people who watch this show probably view themselves as moderates. We did a poll, moderate libertarian types, some Democrat types. So here's what I'm going to say, my message on all of this. Here's what you need to share with your friends and your family. If they don't care about nuclear war and foreign policy, remind them that your utility bill is going to be skyrocketing because of this. And that if we just minded our own business and stayed out of this war, you would be living better. And they may respond with, but the poor people of Ukraine. I agree. The poor people of Ukraine. Yeah, man. I don't like what's happening there. And then I would ask, what does that have to do with us? Nothing. Nothing. So why are we sending billions of dollars? Why are we upsetting the global energy market? Why are we putting ourselves at risk for Ukraine? They're not an EU member nation. They're not a NATO nation. They may be soon. But why? I don't have the answers. I don't. I mean, you've got people who just either want war, they want to sell weapons, they want to control. We have corrupt officials in our government. For what reason is the U.S. involved in this war without congressional approval? That we didn't declare war on Russia. Why are we involved? And we are. You heard it from those House Democrats. That's our number one security priority, defeating Russia and Ukraine. What? Did we vote on this? For what reason are they destroying our economy? They've not justified it to us. And that's what it comes down to for me. In all of these wars and all of the foreign policy, they've never given us a legitimate justification. It's always just, they hate us for our freedoms. Garbage. It means nothing. They hate us for our freedoms. Weapons of mass destruction. Sorry, also not true. Some people have pushed back and said there were some chemical weapons and stuff. Come on. They're talking about dirty bombs and nukes. They weren't involved in 9/11. And now here we go with Iran. You got these protests and riots happening in Iran. And I feel for these people. But I'm going to tell you this. I won't do it during Black Lives Matter, and I won't do it when it comes to Iran. If I don't know the details, I'm not going to come out in defense of anybody. Now, I don't like police brutality. I don't like innocent people being attacked by cops. But these Black Lives Matter rioters and Antifa just destroying things, I'm not going to support them. I see these videos out of Iran. I hear these stories. Tentatively, I think it's a bad thing, but I don't know enough about what's going on there. And I'm certainly not going to believe any Western CIA propaganda. Why? They're setting their sights on Iran again. It's what they've always done. John Bolton, Trump's biggest mistake, one of them at least. Bolton saying, by this time next year, we'll be celebrating in Tehran. You psychopath. Iran is not some desert backwoods country. It is a large mountainous country with missile defense systems. And as much as these psychopaths want war, it ain't going to happen. Conveniently, though, Iraq and Afghanistan happen to surround Iran. We know where it's going. Fall in line. I don't like what the U.S. does in terms of foreign policy, and I don't think Donald Trump liked it either, which is why they were so desperate to stop that man. Trump's far from perfect, but the problem of 100 years will not be solved overnight. This is why Democrats are desperate. They don't want him to win because they want war. I don't. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.